2018 was certainly a year at the cinema. It was a good year for good movies, but it was a bad year for bad movies. There's a lot to get into, so let's talk. We saw some great performances in 2018, like John Krasinski in A Quiet Place or Bradley Cooper in A Star Is Born, who directed themselves in roles they possibly wouldn't have gotten had they not been behind the camera. Rami Malek was absolutely stunning as Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody, even if the film itself was somewhat underwhelming. And Robert Redford brought the curtain down on an unbelievable career with The Old Man and the Gun. For me though, the best one is one of our own, Barry Keoghan, who was absolutely stunning in American Animals. He shifts brilliantly from kind of artistic idealist to, basically borderline psychopath, but he has this quiet, brooding intensity that he just steals focus whenever he's on screen. I don't just see him as the future of Irish cinema. I think he could be the next big breakout star. Unfortunately, 2018 had some absolutely horrendous performances. Boyd Holbrook and Alfie Allen seemed to have a competition during The Predator of who could give the worst performance. Scott Eastwood proved that talent isn't hereditary in Pacific Rim Uprising, but they were absolutely eclipsed by Helena Bonham Carter in Ocean's 8. It's not even that it's a bad performance, it's a bad performance, but it shifts almost scene to scene. Strolling off the set of a Tim Burton film, picking up every accent she possibly could in the way. She's Irish, she's English, she's American, and you really just wish somebody behind the camera would grab a hold of her and go, will you pick an accent and stick with it? She seems to have gone to the Aidan Gillen school of acting. 2018 unfortunately also had some absolutely terrible films. Ocean's 8 took a talented cast and a great premise and managed to strip it of all excitement and adventure. The original Ocean's films, for all their flaws, were always engaging and always kind of breathlessly cool. This had none of that. It just kind of went from A to B to C. Not worth watching. Pacific Rim Uprising somehow managed to take giant monsters fighting giant robots and make it boring, which is kind of an achievement in itself. It has John Boyega from Star Wars, who we know can be a really interesting guy, and you just kind of strip away any semblance of excitement. Definitely don't want to see part 3, which is somehow going to end up getting made. The Girl with the Spider's Web, just an absolute mess, and took one of those interesting book series and of course the original Swedish movies, tried to reinvent the series as some sort of female-led Jason Bourne movie. It just didn't work on any level, and it was probably the longest 2 hours of my life. For me though, the worst film of the year is The Predator. Well, written by Shane Black, I was really excited for this. He's done things like Lethal Weapon, he was involved in the original Predator movie. Absolutely none of it worked. The plot, for want of a better term, is basically the Predators trying to weaponize autism. I don't know. The worst scene of anything this year. What was supposed to be Arnold Schwarzenegger's cameo when the Predator killer comes to Earth. They open the case and of course Arnie's not there because he's read the script and done a runner. And instead this god-awful CGI Iron Man suit comes out. The game is on now, we're going to set up for The Predator 2. I like the ambition that you thought this film was going to warrant a sequel. For me, Predator was just the biggest disappointment of the year and just so much of a missed opportunity for a film that could have been just this B-list gem, but instead just turned into an unwatchable mess. Wasn't all doom and gloom. There was some cracking films in 2018 as well. Black Clansmen, which took the stranger than fiction story of a black FBI agent who infiltrates the KKK. It felt very much like a period piece where you're watching it thinking, it's crazy that things like this happened not that long ago. And then it just shifts focus and you realize, oh no, this is actually still going on. It's tense, it's funny, it's something really unique and original in a year that was really lacking in both. I had some cracking action films this year, but Mission Impossible Fallout was just absolute popcorn brilliance. Every time you walk into a Tom Cruise film, as you're walking in, everyone's kind of having the discussion about, him jumping on the couch with Oprah. He seems like he's from another planet. But you get 10-15 minutes into every film he does, and you just think to yourself, he's just entertaining. You forgive and forget. Another thing for me was Henry Cavill, absolutely fantastic in this, and he's been really underserved by those Superman movies. The bruising, unstoppable, brawler that he is in this. This could be, the kind of next chapter of his career. The two biggest films of the year were actually good as well. Black Panther, which was, it didn't have the recognition of like a Hulk or a Spider-Man, but became this like cultural phenomenon for a time being. It was actually the biggest superhero film of all time. It solved something that the Marvel films and the DC films have had as well, where it actually had a proper villain in it. Michael B. Jordan was absolutely brilliant, and of course he was fantastic as well in Creed 2 this year. The villain made choices that you would agree with, the hero made choices you wouldn't agree with, so there was a nice contrast in both there. Marvel somehow managed to take 10 years and infinite amount of characters, bundle them all together into Avengers Infinity War, and not only make a coherent story, but possibly the best comic book movie of the year. To take every one of those characters and give each of them a story thread and still make it exciting, funny, shocking towards the end. This is set the scene nicely for what obviously be 2019's biggest film, Avengers Endgame. A character I absolutely love is Rocky Balboa. With the Rocky Balboa, the sequel to Rocky 5, that just seemed like such a perfect end to that character. What Stallone does kind of made Rocky a supporting character in his own series, and that was really, really well done. And especially with bringing back someone like Ivan Drago, who's such an icon himself of the Rocky series, and do something really different with him. Like when you see the trailer, you're expecting he's going to be this same kind of bitter old monster that he was, and to bring him back for that and to trust him with different layers of this character, I thought was really good. And I think he really rose to the challenge. The documentary Whitney, based on the life of Whitney Houston, was absolutely spectacular. Now, Whitney Houston wouldn't be somebody who, I'd be a huge fan of. It made her into a real person as opposed to this icon, and it's so easy to forget just how many incredible songs she had. And even as an actress, things like My Guilty Pleasure, The Bodyguard, absolutely fantastic film. You really got a sense of the person who it was, but all the while being entertained by it. Halloween for me was one of those films that at the start of the year I was very apprehensive. It stripped out all the terrible Halloween sequels and just was to make this a straightforward sequel to the original. To be written by Danny McBride from things like Eastbound and Down and Seth Gordon Green, who done Pineapple Express, it didn't have that kind of knowing wink to the camera that a lot of horror films done, and it did something that hadn't been done since the original. It made Michael Myers scary again. This film was far better than it had any right to be. Not only was Halloween an entertaining, exciting film, it's opened this door to a new avenue of movies. We're going to see things like the Terminator ignoring the inferior sequels and just focusing on set after Terminator 2. A new Child's Play series is going to go back to the original, same with Friday the 13th. So the legacy of this film has kind of had an impact not just on the horror genre or the Halloween series, but for a lot of films for years to come. For me, the best film of the year though is one that flew completely under my radar, and that's A Quiet Place. Directed by John Krasinski, who most people know as Jim from The Office. He made this incredible film where you cared about the people, and that's why the tension was so ramped up. It didn't hurt that he'd cast his wife, Emily Blunt, who was an absolutely stunning actress. She's given a really great role here, and I think horror is one of the few genres where, actresses have actually been given great roles. We saw Jamie Lee Curtis return to Halloween this year as well. What really drove this up is the family element, and especially when you hear the concept monsters have come to Earth, they're triggered by sound. You would think the entire film was just going to be silence, jump scare. It doesn't do that. What he brilliantly does is he makes you care about the characters. The family is the actual storyline. It's not the concept of the film. You're never talked down to in this film. It's a really sharp, really smart horror film. A unique, one-of-a-kind movie that, for me, completely stole 2018. 2019 is looking like it's going to be the biggest year for cinema. We have things like It Chapter 2, which is the sequel to the biggest horror film of all time. I think it's great that they're bringing the kids back for this one because they really were the heartbeat of that film. Bill Hader, Jessica Chastain joining the cast. This has the potential to be as good as, if not better than, the original film. Keanu Reeves is going to be coming back in John Wick 3, Parabellum, Latin for Ready for War, which if anything's going to sum up the John Wick franchise, it's that. The end of the second film just opened up this world perfectly, where pretty much every assassin in the world has a price on John Wick's head, and him against the world, I still wouldn't back against John Wick in that one. Literally one of the biggest returns to the screen this year is going to be Godzilla in King of the Monsters. The first film I was really excited by. I thought tonally it looked very good and visually it was absolutely spectacular, but these kind of films tend to focus too much on the human stars. But they seem to be based in the trailer putting the monsters front and center on this, which is what I want from this type of film. Giant monster movies is just absolutely something that's in my wheelhouse. We've got the return of one of the most iconic directors of all time, Quentin Tarantino, with just an unbelievable cast. We've Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Al Pacino. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is set kind of against the backdrop of the Manson murders. The backdrop with Charles Manson is something with Tarantino that you think you can do something really, really special and really, really interesting with. He always seems to pour his heart and soul into everything, and no matter what you think of him, with this cast and this story, I can't see it being anything less than just spectacular. Terminator 6 is also on the horizon for 2019. Most importantly of all, James Cameron's going to be returning. He's got a story credit and a script credit on this. Tim Miller, who directed Deadpool. But again, this just feels like a cash grab with things like Genesis, Terminator Salvation. This just doesn't seem like a franchise that works without Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I think Cameron being distracted with the Avatar films isn't going to help either. The return of Linda Hamilton is something that really intrigues me. I would like to see something like a Mad Max Fury Road version of Terminator, and I don't feel like this is it. This just feels like another straight sequel to a series that's already been run into the ground over and over again. I've also got Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix doing his take on the Joker. This is really interesting for me because you have a well-known version in Heath Ledger's and Jack Nicholson's, and we've seen Jared Leto just take a complete swing and a miss at it with Suicide Squad. Setting this film in the 70s and away from the wider DC universe, they can do something really different. It seems like they're making this real kind of thing, like Taxi Driver is a huge influence on this, those kind of dark and grimy Scorsese films. I think this is where DC needs to go with this. Marvel have, the wider linked universe thing locked down. You're not going to challenge them, and I think this is where DC can really kind of make a name on themselves by having these kind of standalone, elsewhere versions of the characters that we know. 2019 though is probably undoubtedly going to be owned by Disney. They have Star Wars Episode 9, which is the end of the Skywalker saga, Avengers Endgame, the sequel to the biggest film of 2018, not to mention the Spider-Man Far From Home sequel. In addition to that, you've also got the live action version of The Lion King, which was the most watched trailer of all time. Dumbo as well, live action version, and in addition to that we've got Toy Story 4. For me, it's hard to get excited about things like The Lion King. I saw the trailer and it just looks like what I've seen already, much the same way we had with The Jungle Book, and Disney have found this way to kind of monetize nostalgia. I'm really interested to see what J.J. Abrams does with Star Wars. The Last Jedi wasn't particularly well received. Is he gonna, tear down everything that Rian Johnson set up and then, kind of make a Return of the Jedi, happy, send everyone home? Or is he gonna wanna, put his own stamp on things, because this is gonna be the end of his Star Wars series, and is he gonna use this as a jumping off point to kickstart the rest of his career? You've also got the culmination of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Endgame. Where's that going to go? Who's going to be left on the board? Is this going to be the end of Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man? Or are you going to back up the Brinks truck full of money and try and keep all or some of them still on board? So I'm really interested to see when the dust settles on that, pardon the pun, where that's going to leave everybody and how that's going to play out going forward. 2019, when it's all said and done, based on the potential it has, it could be the biggest and best year for cinema that we've had in quite some time.